I never imagined a Tuesday in January would turn into the kind of story you tell at a diner years later, the one where a woman in pearls tries to stop an entire neighborhood from getting out of their driveway, and the system, against the odds, actually works. My name's Grant Baxter. I run a small snowplow outfit, 5 trucks, a handful of good guys, honest work. And Meadowbrook Estates was the kind of contract that let you sleep at night, 40 grand a season, guaranteed steady through November to March. It paid the bills, and it kept my crew fed, and for 3 winters it was as straightforward as plowing. Patricia Thornwell was the HOA president, mid-50s, blonde highlights voice that cut like a warning siren. She wore her authority the way some people wear perfume everywhere all the time, whether you wanted it or not. She'd micromanaged mailboxes, landscaping, even what color the pool chairs could be. So when she marched up to my truck, 3 weeks into a massive nor'easter, unfolded a map like it was doctrine, and told me I had to plow her section first, I smiled and tried to reason it out. Main entrance collectors, then loops, that's the order that keeps emergency access open. She wanted the north cleared first because the north paid premium HOA fees. I explained calmly about traffic flow and emergency access. She snapped, "I'm the board president. Do it my way or you're fired." She turned and drove off like she'd won. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived, a formal complaint, accusations of insubordination, and a demand to appear before the board. So I called Doug, old high school buddy, now a lawyer, and he said, "They're blowing smoke. Your contract covers industry standards. Document everything. Go to the meeting." Doug was right about most HOA spats. They usually die in a week, but this one had theater potential, and Patricia liked the spotlight. The clubhouse meeting felt like a courtroom musical, mahogany paneling, a gavel, and 50 neighbors filling the room like an audience waiting for the act. Patricia ran the show with the precision of someone who'd practiced wielding small powers. When she painted me as a rogue operator who refused to follow HOA directives, I stood up, put a map on the table, and explained the route and the logic, why the entrance needs to be open first, why collectors matter, why her plan would add hours and leave the main road buried. She didn't like being corrected in public. "You have one chance," she told me. "Follow my route the next time it snows, or you're done." The room went quiet. 5 days later, it snowed like the sky was angry. We were out at 5 a.m. Me, Marcus, my best driver, and the crew, and the storm was thicker than the forecast. I started at the main entrance plowing like I always do, and there she was, Patricia's Lexus, parked dead center across both lanes, and Patricia standing in front of it in that same white puffy coat, chin up, arms crossed, looking as if she'd decided to argue with God and the weather. She was blocking the road on purpose. You have 3 choices in that moment: sit and argue while the neighborhood buries itself, physically move her and risk an assault charge, or work around her and do what you can. I chose the last. Marcus and I split the development, cleared collectors and residential loops, patched up what we could access, and left the North Patricia Street under 1.5 feet of snow. By mid-morning, 90% of Meadowbrook was passable. Patricia's corner was immovable. That's when the calls started. Howard, the retired accountant on the board, called confused neighbors. Patricia called like a woman being insulted rather than a citizen in an emergency. I had photos, timestamps, the Lexus, Patricia standing in front of the car. I sent them to the police. By early afternoon, a state trooper named Davidson showed up, looked at the photos, listened, and had a brief, earnest conversation with Patricia at her car. He told her blocking roadways, even on private property, can be disorderly conduct if it interferes with emergency services. 10 minutes later, she moved the Lexus to the clubhouse lot, and I finished clearing her street. If you think that would have ended it, you haven't met a person whose identity is married to a title. Patricia was humiliated in front of neighbors and the state police, and humiliation has a long memory. The board met 2 weeks later without me, and Howard called to tell me she was pushing to terminate my contract. 3 votes to terminate, he said, were in play if she rallied enough fear and loyalty. Doug suggested a pragmatic path: negotiate a settlement, avoid legal fees, move on. But something in me had snapped differently. Not righteous anger, so much as the taste of unfairness. Someone created a safety hazard and tried to blame the contractor who refused to be complicit. Here's where the twist comes in. I got a call from a woman named Rachel Chen. I didn't know her. She was a Meadowbrook homeowner and attorney, and more importantly, she'd been meeting quietly with neighbors who were fed up. She said they had the signatures to force a special membership meeting to vote Patricia off the board. I thought for a second that was wishful thinking. HOAs are famous for inertia. But Rachel had a folder with bylaws, dates, emails, photos, a timeline, and she'd organized the neighborhood like a campaign. The special meeting packed the clubhouse, 150 people, the biggest turnout they'd ever seen. Rachel presented 6 years of mismanagement, property managers driven off landscaping firms, fired over personal grudges, repaving projects that ballooned in cost because Patricia couldn't decide on specs. Then she put my photos on a big screen, the Lexus blocking the road, timestamps the trooper's report, and people murmured. I spoke for 5 minutes, told them why I chose to plow around an obstruction rather than sit and argue, and how doing the right thing sometimes means taking a hit in the short term. When the ballots were counted, the motion passed 98 for removal, 44 against. Patricia's tenure ended that day. The board reinstated my contract and even voted to increase my pay as a small apology for the nonsense. Patricia tried to sue for wrongful removal and defamation. The court dismissed her case with prejudice once the photos and police report were on the record. She eventually sold her house and moved to Florida that spring. No snow, no HOA titles to clutch. It wasn't gloating to say it felt like justice. It felt like the community corrected itself. I'll be honest, it would have been easier to bend follow her map that first angry morning, keep the contract, and avoid the headaches. But easy isn't always right. The slow lesson here is that professional standards matter not because they make you feel noble, but because they keep people safe. Document everything, stay calm, follow the practices that protect people, and let the consequences land where they will. There's a strange satisfaction in that kind of stubbornness. You sleep better knowing you didn't cut corners on safety. There was also an unexpected business payoff. Word got around about how we handled that storm control, the job document, and stand by your standards, and other property managers called. Reputation is a kind of currency here. Turns out being known as the contractor who won't bend to nonsense brought new contracts faster than any ad I could buy. Howard came to me that night and offered a 3-year extension. "We want professionals, not puppets," he said. I thought about the stress, the deposition, the nights replaying a woman standing in the snow like she owned the sky. I accepted. Not for revenge, but because sometimes standing up the right way returns something practical. Respect, steady work, and the ability to lead a crew with your head held high. So yeah, the roads are clear now. The trucks still leave at 5 a.m., and snow still comes every winter. I still show the young guys those photos, not to gloat, but to teach them. There's a line you don't cross when it comes to safety, and that doing the right thing can be inconvenient, costly, and necessary. The system doesn't always correct itself, but when neighbors organize, when someone like Rachel is willing to do the paperwork, and when people prioritize safety over pride, sometimes the right result happens. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done? Would you have shoved the Lexus out of the way, called the cops, sooner followed Patricia's route to keep the contract, or plowed around and let the consequences fall? Drop your take, share your story of petty power or small-town justice, and tell me whether you think justice was served or whether I pushed too far.